Welcome to Zoology class. In the last two classes, we discussed about Mendelian disorders or genetic disorders caused due to single gene mutation. Now these are genetic disorders, and these disorders are or diseases are heritable. That means they can be transferred from, or they are transferred from one generation to another generation. And there's a chance for the transmission to prolong for so many generations. And these diseases are transmitted generation after generation for an indefinite number of generations. Sometimes it may be very essential for us to know the chances of occurrence of these diseases, genetic disorders, in a generation or in a future generation. So this is done, this prediction of the chances of occurrence of this genetic disorder in a particular generation or in the future generations is done by a method called pedigree analysis. So what do you mean by pedigree? Pedigree is the family history of an individual or a family. Pedigree means the family history. So as we are discussing about the genetic disorders due to mutation here, it is the genetic history of a family. Here no discussion. Pedigree analysis means the analysis of the genetic history of a family or of an individual. The genetic history is analyzed to know the source of a genetic disorder or from where the genetic disorder has come, and the chances of occurrence of this genetic disorder in the future generations. For a pedigree analysis, individuals are represented by certain symbols. Individuals are represented by symbols. As represented here in the figure here, a male is represented by a square and a female is represented by a circle, and a rhombus represents an individual whose sex is not identified or his sex is not specified. So a male with a square, female with a circle, and for an individual whose sex is not identified or unspecified is represented by a rhombus. And a marriage is represented by a simple line, a straight line connecting a male and a female. When a male and a female are connected by a double line, shows a consanguineous marriage. Consanguineous marriage means marriage between relatives. A marriage between blood relatives is represented by a double line, that is called a consanguineous marriage. Then children are represented, or a next generation is represented by drawing a vertical line connecting from the marriage line. Okay. Then a shaded figure, a shaded symbol represents that the person has the genetic disorder. The affected people are shown by shaded figures. A shaded square represents an affected male. A male affected with a genetic disorder. A shaded circle shows a female affected with a genetic disorder. So, in this way, individuals are represented in a pedigree analysis. So, different types of genetic disorders can be analyzed by this method. Of course, genetic disorders are of different types. It can be an autosomal dominant mutation, can be due to an autosomal dominant mutation, an autosomal recessive mutation, a sex chromosomal recessive mutation, or a sex chromosomal dominant mutation, whatever it may be. What it can be of any sort, any type. We are discussing here two cases. One is an autosomal dominant mutation, a disease caused due to an autosomal dominant mutation, and another one is a disease caused due to an autosomal recessive mutation. The first one is autosomal dominant mutation. The name of the disease is, one of the examples for this type of disease caused by a dominant autosomal mutation is myotonic dystrophy. Myotonic dystrophy is a disease, is a genetic disorder in which the muscles are lost gradually, or muscle weakness takes place and muscle wasting takes place, and gradually the muscles becomes weak and the mass, the weight of the muscle is lost, and the organ affected with this disease becomes thin and becomes functionless. So generally it happens to the hand muscles or leg muscles. Okay, as it is an autosomal dominant mutation, even if a single parent is affected with this disease, there is a high chance for the children to get the disease because it is a dominant mutation. The allele, the mutated allele, is a dominant allele. So a single mutated allele is enough for the expression of this disease. So if any one of the parent has this disease, there is a high chance for the children to get the disease. So as represented here, you can see one of the parent has a disease and the disease is transferred to the children, not all the children, but 50% of the children gets the disease. And the next generation also, the children are affected with this disease. So in this way, by analyzing the pedigree, we can find out the source of the disease and also the chances of the future occurrence of this disease. Now the next example is autosomal recessive mutation. A disease caused due to autosomal recessive mutation. That is very familiar to us. We had already studied that one in the last class. That is sickle cell anemia. It is due to an autosomal recessive mutation. And in this case, even if the parents are carriers, see the diagram here, apparently the parents are not affected by sickle cell anemia. Both the parents are normal, apparently, both are normal, but the children are affected. Why the children are affected even though the parents are not affected? Only one reason for that, the parents are carriers. The parents are carriers here. So the parents are not affected, but the children are affected. So in this way, by depicting the disease in the family history or in the pedigree, we can trace the disease to the future generations. So we can find out, or we can predict to some extent, the chance for occurrence of a genetic disorder in the future generation also. So that is pedigree analysis of the genetic history of a family or an individual. Okay. So we shall see in the next class.